Welcome to the Bullish Drive Podcast, where we explore the realms of faith, mental performance, and personal testimonies through conversations with high-level performers. Join us as we extract valuable insights from their experiences to supercharge your pursuit of peak performance. This is the Bullish Drive Podcast. What's up, guys? It's James, your mental performance coach, and thank you so much for joining us again on episode 4, season 2 of the Bullish Drive Podcast. I'm super blessed about our guest today because we dive into just the journey that he has been on, from starting in his church music band and the opportunities that opened up that brought him to South America, to national tours, and eventually playing for Dante, Bowe in Maverick City. And just everything he had to balance with that, the boundaries he had to put in, the way he had to organize, and just the mental resilience required to carry that. And I think it's a conversation that we don't talk a lot about when we have young aspiring musicians coming up. What do you have to do mentally? What do you have to do with your life? What do you have to organize to be a successful touring musician? And then on top of that, he got married. And now moving into the international touring, how does he set boundaries and time for that? So it's an incredible honor to have Ryan Classe on the show today, former guitarist for Dante, Bowe and Maverick City. And I met him a couple years back when my church hosted Maverick City, and just the conversations and just his journey and his walk with Christ. And I appreciate just how this conversation went, the authenticity, the transparency, and just where his life has taken him. So if you stay tuned, you'll definitely experience just that authenticity, and just everything that Ryan has to share is greatly appreciated, and just the conversation that we had today. So without further ado, I'm super stoked to invite Ryan Classe to the Bullish Drive Podcast. Welcome to the show.
Honestly, it's like an honor and a pleasure to be on your show. So
yeah, man. Well, I appreciate your willingness to do it. I know it's been a minute since we met each other, and you know, just because we hosted Maverick City, and that's when we met, you know, and chatted. Your hair was a little longer though then. I thought
it was. I'm growing it back out. So you know, maybe in like 4 or 5 months it'll be at that length, you know.
Okay, all right, I got you. So so with that, you know, when I met you, you were touring, you know, you're playing guitar as that. Can you kind of give an introduction of just how you got to that point and where your guitar journey kind of started?
Yeah, so it's kind of a lifelong journey. So my dad plays guitar, and so that means I kind of grew up around music and around like 80s rock and roll, because he was in like an 80s type of band, you know? So as a kid, I kind of dabbled in guitar, but I never got serious until about high school. So originally I was going to go to college for aerospace engineering, and I started that, and then I got offered a gig to play in a band, and I was like, well, I could take this gig and go back to college later, but I can't stay in college and get this gig back. So I dropped out of college and took the gig, and kind of little by little, that gig led to a big tour, and then that tour just led to more opportunities, honestly. It just kind of compounded, you know?
Yeah. What was that decision making like? Because I mean, like you said, aerospace
engineering. Yeah.
Dude, that's like, man, I feel like it takes a lot just to be like, I'm going to be an aerospace engineer. And then like this gig comes along and you're like, now I'm going to go on the road, you know? So what was that decision making like balancing that out?
I feel like in the moment it was kind of easy for me, just because the people that I had around me in my life were really supportive, especially my family and my parents. Like, I think my dad definitely wanted me to finish college, just because, you know, especially back then, that was kind of like a really good thing to have. But he supported my decision to not go to college, or like not finish college and pursue music. So yeah, I think that made it easier for me.
Sure. And I mean, with your dad having the musical background and stuff too,
right?
You know, I'm sure that helped supported that.
What
was your first gig, if you don't mind me asking? What was that?
So it was, well, like my first paid gig, I guess, would have been at a church. I feel like a lot of musicians kind of grow up in church, and then that leads to like a paid position and then other gigs. And my first gig outside of the church that I dropped out of college for was a band called Frequency, and it was like top 40, so like weddings and like dance clubs and stuff, that sort of thing.
Cool.
Yeah.
So was that like local then, or did they travel around?
It was.
Okay.
We traveled around like Florida and South Florida, but nothing too crazy, you know.
Yeah, nothing too crazy. Well, okay, so you said that you kind of started with a paid gig in church, and was that kind of like your first experience playing in a band setting? Before that, was there any experience with band settings?
Yeah, so that was my first time. I think like in elementary school I kind of played in church, like the kids' church, and then in middle school I kind of did the same thing. And then as I got better, you know, I could play on like the adult service on Sunday. And then the church I was playing at, I was a volunteer for many, many years. And then as I started playing like at the adult services, a lot of the other band members were getting paid, and they were like professional musicians. So as I got better and I was older, I was like, you know what, I think I'm good enough to start getting paid. So I just kind of had a meeting with them, and I was like, look, I think I deserve to be paid with the work that I'm putting in and the skill that I've built. And they agreed. So it turned into a paid position. Yeah.
And that's just going out and asking for it, right? Like I think that's a big thing with musicians, at least with my experience, you know, because I've been playing music since I was like 4 years old, and you know, it becomes this like hobby for so many, but then it's like, what do you do when you want to take that leap into a career with your music? How do you ask? How do you start? How does those conversations go? How did that conversation go? Unless it's like super private, you know, but like,
no, it's not. It's hard to remember the details because it was so fast, and it was like such a kind of an instant like yes from them, just because I think in the back of their head maybe they knew that I was doing the same amount of work, if not more, than some of the other people. And I think maybe they were just kind of waiting for me to bring up that conversation, honestly. So I brought it up, and they were really nice about it, you know. There was no arguments or anything. There was no pushback. So I feel like I got maybe lucky, or maybe because I built that relationship as a volunteer from being in middle school to being an adult, it just worked out really easy for me.
Yeah, can you talk about that commitment as a volunteer? Because I think as a volunteer, you can kind of choose like, oh, I'm only gonna like serve once a month or something like that. Were you serving a lot? Did that kind of help get you to that point? Yeah, I was like serving once, twice a week, you know, like playing at the midweek, like the youth services. And then playing on Sunday. So it was honestly like a lot of time that I put in there as a volunteer. Yeah, and I mean, that commitment I'm sure helped out. And then how old were you when you had that conversation? I
think I was 16 or 17.
Oh, okay. So you're an older youth moving in.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and then how long
I had gotten a part-time job at Publix, which was across the street from the church. So I was like, what if I just start getting paid for all the time that I'm putting in here, and then I wouldn't really have to work at Publix, you know? Yeah,
absolutely. And it worked out. Yeah. and then as an adult musician in church, what did that ever take away from just your ability to be in church, being up there and being like putting a lot of time in there and stuff like that?
Not at first. I'll say the first couple years, I think nothing really changed in my mind other than I'm getting paid, but you know, I still had the exact same thought process throughout why I was doing what I was doing, and like the time and effort I would put into it. Yeah. And I think like when I was like 21 or 22, I got a new gig at a new church, which was much more of a time commitment and like an investment, as far as the music was way more difficult, and all the musicians were like top caliber, high quality musicians. And I think that environment definitely changed my mindset towards more of, oh, this is like a gig. And even the pastors there were like, yeah, we're hiring you. Like, this is a job, you know? So that was just a different culture. And I'm not saying that it was better or worse. It was just different church culture, you know?
Yeah. Can you speak on just being in an environment where there are just more like you said, higher caliber musicians. When I moved into creative church, I love the old church I was at before, like completely saved me and
Yeah.
brought me to Jesus. But at the same time, when I came to creative, like the caliber of musician was just so much higher. And I
Yeah.
thought I was a pretty good musician until I came to creative. And I remember the first time, like at my old church, I was the only, keyboardist MD. And then when I came to creative, there were like 4 of us. And so it's like, dang, you guys are really good. And so how did that push you to develop your skills entering into that environment?
It was the best thing that happened to me as far as for like my musicality. Just because the drummer, the bass player, the keyboard MD, and even the organist, honestly, like everybody would just push each other. And even if like you weren't as good as them, because there was also 2 other guitar players that were volunteers, even those guys got pushed, to their limits, which was just amazing to watch people grow and then be able to grow yourself and just have that bond with a band as you spend time together.
Yeah. And as they push each other through. Did that church create any music yet, or was that part of that group? I
don't think they ever did like original music that they recorded. They might have like since I left, but that was probably 8 years ago.
Sure. Okay. And so that kind of brings us up to this college gig, and I know you're doing weddings and stuff like that. But then you said that as you were doing these, it opened up more and more opportunities. What was that journey like? Like, what were those conversations and experiences like?
So the very first church that we talked about where I went from volunteer to being paid, I met a guy there who was a keyboard player and like a producer. And I had not talked to him for 5 or 6 years. And I was playing in the cover band that I dropped out of college for. And he calls me up out of the blue and was like, hey, I have this opportunity with a new band. It's a big tour, like arenas, all that, all over South America. And he was like, here's the details. If you want the gig, like it's yours. So it was just an out of the blue call from that relationship years ago at the church that I just had. And I don't really know how to describe it. It's just don't burn bridges and be a good person and try to remain in contact with people, and you get like these opportunities.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask you about that. The more high performers I have conversations with, they say exactly the same thing. Just stay in touch with those contacts. You don't know what opportunities come up. Is there a skill that you've learned to help maintain your networks? Because I think as people grow in their professions, those networks get really big. How do you manage that and stay on top of mind?
It's definitely difficult, but I think it's important. So I would say there's like multiple circles. I have like my closer circle that I'm in pretty constant communication with, and then I have like a little bit of a wider circle that maybe like on social media, we message and comment on all of each other's posts and whatnot. And then there's a wider network where it's more like a colleague or an acquaintance where like I would call them for work, but like I don't call them like to just talk to them and catch up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I would say maybe recognize those levels of connection that you have with people. And if you have someone that you desire to have a closer or deeper connection with, as far as if it's work or personal or both, then make an attempt to have that connection. And if it's someone that you don't want that with, then recognize that too. And don't be a jerk, but also have your boundaries,
Yes, but it takes effort on our parts, right?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, I think some people, especially the naturally gifted, those who just seem to have the knack for it, undervalue the effort it takes just to stay in contact with people. I think there's this pre-assumption that like if you're really good, someone's gonna find you, right? Yeah. But that's not necessarily the case, right? Like you still have to put work into it.
If you build it, they will not come. That is a big myth.
Yeah, for sure. Do you use social media a lot then to stay in contact with people?
Yeah, so I would say maybe the past year, I've been slacking on making it a priority. But I would say maybe in the past couple weeks, I've started to recognize the potential that I could build my business on social media.
Yeah.
And I've started to try to make it like a conscious effort where I'm posting or messaging or just interacting with people to stay top of mind.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's how I reached out to you for this interview. Yeah. So that makes sense. So now going back to this touring trip around, you said South America.
Yeah. So the band is called CNCO, and they're not. I'm pretty sure they actually just like broke up and did their last tour.
Oh, no.
But it was, imagine One Direction, but it's like reggaeton.
What?
That's what the group was. Yeah.
Okay.
It was interesting.
One Direction, but reggaeton. Now I love reggaeton. I just can't see One Direction singing that. You know?
Yeah, it was different. I'll say it was an awesome time. Like, forever thankful.
Yeah,
it's just way different than anything I had ever done.
Yeah, definitely. So, you knew it was reggaeton when you?
Yeah, he like told me who it was, and I looked him up and saw the music and whatnot.
Yeah. And so in that decision, were you like, this is going to build my skill, or was it like, I get to go touring? Like, what was your big motivator?
I would say first off, it was like the opportunity to go on a big tour. And I had never toured before. And it was like, my first tour is going to be like a big, like sold out arena tour. And I was like, that's what every young musician dreams of doing. So I was like, I should totally take it. And then the second most important thing was honestly probably the money. The money was pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, you want to be compensated for your work. How long after that? Because I know you were the guitarist for Dante Bowe, right?
Yeah.
So what was the track leading up to meeting him and being like, hey, do you want to be my guitarist type of thing?
Yeah. So after the tour with the reggaeton band, I got married like towards the end of the tour, and then my wife and I moved to LA to be a part of this church it was like a kind of like TBN. It was called House of Destiny. Oh yeah. And like, just to be honest, I don't recommend anybody like be a part of that group just because stuff, but
because stuff.
It was a cool opportunity. It was a cool opportunity, you know. Yeah. You know, people who are in it will know. Yeah. But that kind of, I was there for about a year playing guitar, and that was kind of like my full-time job, just playing guitar there. And then the pastor who was there started his own church. So then I kind of did the same thing, playing guitar and doing some musical directing for that church that he started. And then COVID hit. This is what, like 2020 probably. Yep. COVID hits and everything shuts down because we're in LA. So it's like really shut down. So then after a couple months, my wife and I get a job offer here in Fort Lauderdale, where we're at now, at a church. And we take it. And then a couple months go by, and I get a call from this guy named Taiwan. Okay. So the reason Taiwan calls me is because at House of Destiny in LA, there was some musicians there who, through mutual friends, Taiwan calls me because of that. And it's a one gig with Dante, and I fly out to the gig, play the gig, and they're like, we like what you do. Will you play guitar for Dante? So the rest is history. Hopefully that wasn't like too confusing, but
no, that makes, I mean, it emphasizes once again the importance of keeping connections, right? And even if you leave an organization or a group, you know, you never want to burn bridges, right?
Oh yeah.
You know, I think there's this weird thing about, you know, if you disrespect me, I disrespect you, you know, in our culture. But like, for high performers, you can't, you know, if you want to make it, you can't really make enemies. You have to play nice with everybody, pretty much. You know what I mean? And so you did that one gig. And what came next? Was it music videos? Was it national tours? Like what happened after that?
So after that, this was mid to late 2020 when I did that one gig, and then kind of got the offer to be the guitar player. It was pretty slow just because we were still dealing with COVID. So it was kind of more so like one-off gigs here and there at churches or festivals.
Mm-hmm.
And during this time, I'm playing guitar here in Fort Lauderdale at a church. And that's like my main income, my main job. So, over the next 2-ish years, things just picked back up with Dante because life was happening again after COVID. And we went on tour. We went to Europe and did some cool stuff over there. And we recorded a bunch of music. And that's kind of it,
Yeah. Man. So everything just kind of happened like super quick.
It did. Yeah.
Yeah. And then your wife, did she come with you during these tours or did she stay home?
No. So a few shows for the tour, she would come out and hang out, or like if I had a couple off days during a tour, I would fly home and hang out with her. So it was kind of like, she would come out or I would go home,
That's a lot of like airtime,
It is.
Sitting up there and there.
I had, a lot of status with airlines, which was nice.
Sure. So let's talk about that, man. Let's talk about just that balance. Like what did you have to do to maintain that? And was it a learning curve or did it come naturally? How did you develop that?
Definitely a learning curve. And I think for me, in the way that kind of my mind works and my personality type, I'm pretty independent and pretty introverted. So like I have friends who I don't talk to for years, and then we hang out or talk to each other like randomly, and it's like, oh yeah, things are great. Like still, I would consider them a close friend still, So my wife is kind of the opposite of that. So even now, like both of us are still working every day to kind of understand and communicate better, just because I think being in a relationship is always, or at least being in a marriage is always learning and always growing. And it's always work, honestly. Like it's not just, oh, we got married. Everything is right. A breeze from here on there, So I think especially being on tour, it kind of just multiplies what you have to do, if you want to maintain a healthy relationship.
Yeah, like fly across an ocean every other day.
Yeah.
Do stuff.
So actually earlier this year, I did a tour, and she got in a really bad car accident while I was on the road.
Oh my gosh.
So I flew out the morning. It was like she got in a car accident that night, and I flew out the next morning and missed some of the shows on the tour just because it was like, family is more important than my job. And thankfully, the people on the tour 100% understood that and were very supportive. So
that's really good.
That happens.
Yeah. That just to maintain those boundaries. Did you have, now you said family's more important, was that boundary in place before you started going on tour, or was that something you had to like start putting into place as you were traveling more?
So I think I had somewhat of a boundary, and I think in my mind I had more of a boundary than I thought I did, because there were some family events that I missed for work. Like I did a trip in Europe and I missed an important family event for that trip. In my mind, I thought it wasn't as important as it was. So I think your boundary can also be determined by what other people expect of you. So now I do have a stronger boundary with that. But I think before maybe it wasn't strong enough. Yeah.
How did you figure out the expectation piece of that? Because I think sometimes we can fly into these, with all the emotions and the excitement, just kind of dive into these opportunities, and then those conversations become farther and farther in the rearview mirror, and it's like, well, now I'm so far in, like I can't change it now. So when did you learn about those expectations, and how did you develop those?
So it was just through communication, honestly, like specifically with my wife. And not only communication on her end, but also on my end. How she puts it is pursuing understanding. And I think there's no better way to put that than on my end. I have to continue to pursue that understanding.
Man, that's so good. That's a lesson in word of itself. I think sometimes we stay so surface level in our conversations, you know, and just, I mean, you summed it up wait, you said your wife summed it up, or you summed it up? Like, we should give credit where credit.
That was her credit all the way. Yeah.
Yeah. But thank you for sharing. So I'll give you that credit. That was good stuff. So I know, when we were chatting, you know, you talked about how you kind of stepped away from the faith a little bit now in your journey. And I know that Dante has as well, a little bit. Did those coincide with each other, or was there another experience that kind of led to that?
So for me, it was definitely, maybe it was almost 2 years ago now that I kind of started that questioning phase and kind of just diving deeper into the Bible and kind of, why do I believe what I believe and make the choices I make, and like, let me stop listening solely to like these pastors and like all these people, and let me dive into the Bible to see what it says for itself, you know? So that was about 2 years ago. And then it's been, I feel like it's still a journey, but I feel like for the past year, it's been more concrete for me. Yeah, for sure. So when you say you stepped away, is it more just from like established religion, or is it the belief in Christianity in general? I think for me, it's the belief in Christianity in general. Sure. So I'm not like, this definitely isn't real and like everything's a sham. I think for me, it's more like, I don't know at this point. I have so many questions that are unanswered, and from my personal experience, I just have not seen sufficient evidence for me to like continue to live my life a certain way based on the Bible and what it says. Yeah. So my whole family is still strong Christians. My mother-in-law is still, she's probably like the strongest Christian I know, and she like truly lives out everything, which I think is amazing, because she like to the T like walks the walk. So it's interesting to have conversations with people, and a lot of the work I still do is in the Christian industry, so it's really interesting to have conversations with people. About it. I can imagine that would be a creative just the discussions that would come out of it, and the questions that you have, you know, as far as the faith goes. And I think that's where it comes out, you know, the second question God ever asked humanity was like, who told you? Right? Like, who told you? You know, and I think especially when you grow up in a church, you can prematurely adopt, you know, an identity or a belief. You know, in psychology, we call it identity foreclosure, right? Like prematurely adopting somebody else's identity before you do your own, you know, searching and stuff like that. And I think we do, as Christians, we do have to get to a point where we dive into the Bible and we figure out, like, you know, who is God? Like, who is this Jesus? Who's the Savior that we ask ourselves? And it needs to be a necessary part of our journey, or else we try and live our faith through other people that isn't necessarily our experiences, right? So, and now is your wife still practicing, and or so we kind of went through the process together, which I think really helped, and because we had each other to kind of walk through that process, because, you know, our whole identity, our whole career, our whole life from childhood was wrapped up in Christianity. So leaving that behind was definitely the most difficult thing that I've ever had to walk through, just because it's like, if I don't have this, like, I have no purpose and no identity. So finding my purpose and my identity for the past 2 years has been a really tough journey, but I feel like I'm better than I've ever been now. So for me, it was worth it. Yeah, for sure. And now the purpose for you, what do you say your purpose is now? Honestly, it's like similar, like, because most of the morals in the Bible are like, that I agree with. So many things that Jesus taught and did, like, are incredible. So like, love is the highest thing. Like, that's still, like, what's the point of me building a business, or me trying to make a lot of money, or trying to sell a lot of albums? You know, for me, I want to get to a point where I'm able to help others achieve their dreams and see success in their life, whatever success means to them, because it's different for everybody.
Yeah.
So I think that's like my purpose, and that's where I'm trying to get.
Is Christ in your future, you think? Do you think there could be a return to Christianity for you?
You know, right now I would say no, but for what I always say is like, if God is real and Jesus is who he says he is, like, if that's all true, I would love to see like him show up in my life, and I would believe. But then again, you also have the argument of, oh, well, you have to have faith, you know? But it's like, I think there's a balance between evidence and faith for me. And I just haven't seen enough evidence. And if I see it, then obviously, we'll come back, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, naturally your heart is in the place of just wanting to know the truth, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's what a lot of the journey is. You know, especially for Christians, as you know, like, we want to know the truth, you know, and I think some people can get stuck in the like, well, I don't care if it's real, you know. Well, then it's like the conversation's done then, right? Like, your heart's not there. Well, I appreciate your transparency with it. You know, I'm not sure how other discussions have gone, but like, I think these type of conversations are good just to have, you know, with individuals. So are you then touring? You said you still work in the Christian industry. So how involved are you now in the Christian industry?
It's definitely less than it was. And I think for me, like in my thought process, like, I do still enjoy some of the styles of music that that Christian world has, as far as like being a musician, like playing guitar, you get to play with like a lot of effects and do cool stuff. So I think for me, whenever I'm pretty open about what I believe now and like where I'm at. So if people are okay with that, then by all means, like, I'll play at your church, I'll go on your tour, you know, I'll mix your record. And if people aren't cool with that, then that's cool too. Like, I understand, like, no hard feelings. But as long as they know that I'm not gonna like fake anything. Like, if I play at their church, I'm not gonna like pretend that I'm on my knees like worshiping, you know what I mean? Right. Because I don't want to be fake about it. Yeah, no,
and that's fair. That's really honorable of you. And you said you're starting your own business, so we're kind of nearing the end of the time, but I also want you to be able to share what you're doing right now in your business. So what are you doing right now?
So primarily, I'm staying at home and either recording guitars on people's records or mixing records for people. And then I'm slowly backing away from traveling so much in the touring world. So for me, it's been good. And in my future, I would love to still travel and do tours here and there. Just, I'm going to be a lot more selective about which artists and which people I work with. Just so I enjoy being home, and I would love to build a family in the next few years, you know? And I think being home is healthy for that.
Well, yeah, absolutely. You know, be there, present dad. That helps out. So is there a website or a place that people can go to if they're looking for something to mix their music or anything like that?
Yeah, so I have a website. It's just www.ryanclasse.com, just my name. And then I'm on Instagram, Ryan_Classe. So those are my two active places where you can find me.
I love that. Yeah. Well, man, I appreciate your transparency. Thank you for being on the show today. Is there anything else you want to say before we hop off?
Oh, that's tough. Just talk about your feelings and don't bottle stuff up, and put relationships and people first.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan, for being on the show today. So appreciate your time and your authenticity. And if you are an aspiring musician and you're looking to get tracks mixed, reach out to Ryan, www.ryanclasse.com, or check him out on his Instagram at Ryan_Classe. And of course, if you are looking to up your performance and you're struggling with performance anxiety, performance trauma, and imposter syndrome, or just all the other things that come with a rising musician, Check us out at www.bullishdrive.com. I would love to chat with you. Sign up for a free consultation. And of course, it starts with you, and your destiny is waiting. We'll see you next week. Peace.